make the artist as comfortable as possible in your place, performing or whatever, then you're going to get the best music, and that's what the main focus is. The music shouldn't be in too large a place, any more than chamber music, string quartet. It's lost, the human expression, the feeling from the musicians, and so small places have, small facilities. We do need them. We need them for jazz, and we need them for all small group music. But economically, they're going to have to be subsidized now.
The Bach Dancing and Dynamite Society has been a musical institution in the San Francisco Bay Area since scheduled programs began in 1966. Starting from humble beginnings in 1957 as the tiny Ebb Tide coffee shop just across from isolated Miramar Beach in Half Moon Bay, the Bach has grown over the years into a unique musical venue that has presented many world-famous jazz musicians and the occasional classical group for over 55 years. But with famous jazz clubs closing or barely hanging on due to the pandemic, what will happen to the Bach after the age of COVID? When 27-year-old Pete Douglas first moved up to the Bay Area with his wife and baby daughter, he wound up taking a job as a San Mateo County probation officer. But Pete was never destined to be a respectable official. Soon, he craved a return to the laid-back, music-filled Southern California beach life of his youth.
One hot night I'm laying in bed, suddenly the light bulb goes off, just like the cartoon. And I said, I'll go back to the beach and find someplace to rent. So Saturday morning or something, I had to babysit the only child, Linda. She was 3 years old. And I put her in the car and we drove out here.
This exploratory trip in November of 1957 to the coast, and eventually to Miramar Beach, led Pete to purchase a lot by the ocean with a stucco shack on it, an abandoned old beer joint with a counter and 7 stools inside. He converted it into a coffee shop and home. He and his wife slept in the rear in an unfinished pump house, and the children slept in a bedroom in the back of the shop.
Well, it was one of those beautiful winter days in December. The sun was out. I'm in a bathing suit. It was so warm. And I thought, well, now we did the right thing, We'll fix this place up somehow and live in it.
For a while, Pete continued to commute to San Mateo, working the cafe on weekends and holidays. Pete's non-conventional, laid-back, Beat Generation philosophy and style of dress clashed with the requirements of his job as a probation officer, and even, at times, with the straight upper-middle-class values of his own upbringing.
I wasn't trying to be a bohemian type, but the way, in my mind, and trying to live on the beach and all that, I was trying to find a place in this society. I wasn't going to get along in the straight world, that politically I was always in trouble in any organization, and I couldn't stand it because I couldn't be honest.
The same relaxed, accepting seaside ambiance that attracted Pete to Miramar Beach attracted many of his patrons, including beach bums, wayward teens, hippies, and hitchhikers, and his cafe prospered.
Miramar Beach was, just a small rural town. There was only buildings right along Murata Road. There wasn't anything in the back fields. There was agriculture. They, maybe grew peas or something like that. But for the most part, it was just absolutely, it's beautiful now, but it was absolutely beautiful then. And we would run around. I mean, my parents were pretty laissez-faire. And so we pretty much, had the rule the roost around here. You could walk right down to the beach. There was no cliff. It was just sand dunes, and so we were at the beach often. We rarely had shoes on. We hung out in the ponds and collected frogs, and so it was it was definitely a nice childhood. And I remember sitting at the bar at the original beer joint, as my dad likes to call it, they called it the Ebb Tide Cafe, which is what we lived in.
Pete was a natural in this role. since his live and let live attitude welcomed all kinds of people that wandered by his isolated location.
Inside me, I'm a real straight middle class guy. Also, it was very important that I could be myself. I was so tired of having to think or be political around people or be socially correct. Coming back to the beach was the refuge.
He created this scene, and no matter what, he was going to keep going at that.
Informal jam sessions started in the tiny cafe in 1958, rather spontaneously. As business thrived, Pete made the Bach a nonprofit and found himself in need of a proper home for his growing family.
In the beginning, I was, 20, 25 years ago, when these guys were jamming in my house. What was I doing? I was enjoying the music. I wasn't thinking about being a community leader in jazz or anything like that. I was just having fun.
By 1966, a home was built around the coffee shop, and his new living room was used to accommodate up to 150 people for more formal music presentations.
As time went on, my dad then built on our home, which was the northern side of the building here, and I have a lot more memories of the music at that point, and because that's when I think it became more formalized. I started charging.
Pete's 3 daughters, who were living close by with his now ex-wife, were called upon every Sunday to send out invitations and to set up, take down, and clean up after concerts.
We would set up chairs and we had a stage right in our living room. We'd swing around the couch, and many people just sit on the floor or on the couch, and then in the chairs lined up.
Pete never intended for the Bach to become a world-famous jazz venue. But the growing number of appreciative and enthusiastic patrons outgrew the confines of his living room. In 1972, Pete added a formal concert hall onto his home, with 200 seats and a small stage. Creating and nurturing the Bach and its unique ambiance was Pete's artistic and cultural masterpiece.
As I changed and matured, I began to understand myself more and more about the music, what the role was. In fact, I would say no matter how much I enjoyed jazz, I was always a little skeptical of its pretensions about being, an art music or something like that. But perhaps even as late as 10 years ago, I began to, when I had booked through the really world-class talent through here, I begin to see what an incredible and remarkable music it is. Then you feel a responsibility then, see? You're no longer just enjoying it, you feel responsible to the music, to presenting that music to an audience in the best possible way.
I met Pete Douglas in 1973 through a mutual friend. I was living here in Santa Cruz in my Volkswagen bus, and I was looking to take some music recording classes at the College of San Mateo. And so I was gonna have to live somewhere up there, and I was living in my bus, and my mutual friend, Clark Schultes, who's actually serves on our board today at Kawumba Jazz, told me about this crazy guy, Pete Douglas, that had this house on the beach where he did jazz concerts every week, and he'd take me up and introduce me, and he thought that Pete would like me and that I could park my bus on his property and help him out and live there, and then commute over, just right over Highway 92 to College of San Mateo to go to school. So it was a great scene, and Pete was a love to hang out. And since I ended up not going to school, I had plenty of time on my hands to work around there and do projects and hang out with him, and we just talked music all the time. And I got to hear some great music. I remember a great Bobby Hutcherson concert. I remember Bill Evans played there, and I got to meet Bill Evans. It was my first experience, my first professional experience in the music business. So Pete was he was my mentor. He was the one who got me into the business.
Remaining true to his principle of providing patrons with the highest quality musical experience was Pete's driving force. He could be truthful to a fault and had a short fuse. He said what was on his mind and made no bones about it, sometimes hurting or angering those around him.
Being kids here and, trying to live with him in this lifestyle, it was tough. Dad would, if someone walked up, because it looks like a public building, a lot of people walk up all the time, he just invites them right in. You could be having dinner. He'd be like, yeah, pull up a chair, let's have dinner. As a kid, you want your dad's attention once in a while. Oh no, just like that, it's gone.
Pete had a really unique personality, and he could get hot real fast. And if he didn't like something that was going on, and so he could be a little volatile sometimes, but he was really sweet. I understood who he was, and I knew how to tiptoe around him when he was getting a little testy.
Pete was beloved by the musicians who played at the Bach and appreciated his efforts to provide them with the best conditions to play their music, and by his patrons, who developed great loyalty to Pete and to the Bach.
I think what made Pete tick, and there were three traits that he had in abundance. He was a passionate guy, and he was very passionate about music, particularly jazz and classical music. He was also very stubborn, and if he wanted to do something, he was just going to keep doing it, even if he had to keep beating his head against the wall. And third, he was a very social guy. Pete loved a social scene. And so I think when you combine those three things, he's living out there in the beach, he's got a little place that's already licensed for entertainment and a public space. So it was already zoned for that. So I think you combine his passion for music, his dedication and stubbornness, and the fact that he just loved a social scene, I think it evolved over time.
Pete died in 2014 at the age of 85. His middle daughter, Barbara, became president of the society. Since then, she has taken up the mission of carrying on Pete's vision of presenting jazz in a chamber music-light setting where both world-class musicians and the audience can share an intimate artistic experience. With the onset of the coronavirus, this task has become increasingly challenging. Many famous jazz clubs have either closed or are struggling to remain open. Knowing the challenges already faced by her father in nurturing the Bach for so many years, Barbara views this time as just one of many challenges to keep this special venue alive.
I think that Barbara has done as good a job, and frankly, much better than most, in staying active. She's doing live streaming almost every week. And what's amazing about Barbara, I tell her sometimes, she has a lot of her dad in her. She's stubborn, she's determined, she's very smart. She's a much better business person than I think Pete ever was. But she has that same passion for the music and that same sense of determination that she's going to do this. I still remember when after Pete passed and she came to me about what I thought she should do with the Bach, and I said, Barbara, let it go. It's, maybe this thing, as great as it was, should begin with Pete and end with Pete. I said, it's a whole lot of work to keep this going, and you'd have to build an infrastructure, and you really want to think long and hard about it. And as I should have figured, she didn't take my advice. And as in true Douglas fashion, moved forward with it, and God bless her. She's done amazing things. The Bay Area should be very thankful to have the Bach still an operational venue and have somebody of Barbara's skill and intelligence and dedication to keep it going.
It's been 60 years almost now of what has happened here, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't think there are very many places in the world that have been in existence this long presenting live jazz. And yeah, only maybe 30 concerts a year, not, you know, not like some of the clubs that do it every night or did. But we've been consistent, and we've been doing this for a long time, and the musicians are such a big part of it. I always say, you know, Sundays is like going to church here. It is, you know, a moving experience, and the musicians are moved, the audience is moved. You know, it's a beautiful experience.
The one thing I've learned putting on any kind of music here, if I ever had one thing to say to audiences, it would be, if you have a fine artist and they're playing well, don't worry about what you know about the music. It's their job to communicate. You'd be amazed how they can go through layers of your prejudices and your emotional entanglements of the day when you walked into the place and all the other problems you bring with you. A great music performance cuts through it all. You become a changed person.